Hey, welcome back. It's New Comics, bitches! Part 3. Now that we're done with the Flashpoint discussion, we're going to go to some other stuff. We're going to start covering some Marvel comics. We're going to start out with X-Men number 12. Chris Yost's, who, I'm a huge fan of, at least definitely on the Marvel animated side, not the Marvel movies so much, but the Marvel animated, the actual shows like Wolverine and the X-Men and Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes are two of like the coolest cartoons to come out in a really long time, since the Justice League cartoons, really. So I thought I would hate Wolverine and the X-Men, or not hate it, but just not really care for it that much because it was Wolverine and the X-Men. But it really was awesome. So anyway, and Avengers just kicking all sorts of ass. So if you're not watching it, please do yourself a favor and watch it. So, but anyway, X-Men number 12 starts out again, kind of at the beginning of some evolutionary era in human history. And I don't know if that's an appearance now. If you've read the comic, I don't know if that's an appearance by the Eternals. That's in those first couple of pages, because I'm not up on the Eternals. They look like the Eternals though. But what we're dealing with here, the people that they're kind of in and out. They're only there for like a page. But what we're really dealing with here is, it goes back to, it starts in the past at the, beginning of the X-Men career, the 5 originals. And they are confronting the evolutionaries for the first time. They're in the X-Mansion, and they ask Professor X if he speaks on behalf of all mutant kind. And the evolutionaries seem to be very directly respond. They seem to be very insistent on ensuring the survival of Homo superior. But that would also deem the extermination of Homo sapiens, because the evolutionaries seem to understand that that no matter what, Homo sapiens will try to destroy Homo superior because of the differences. It just seems to be the way that what they've seen, presumably throughout history. That when a new evolutionary group comes in, the other one tries to fight it off, or by natural selection, the stronger, the survival of the fittest, basically. So where they're going with that, I'm a little unsure. But that's that rattles everybody a little bit because obviously their parents, all of these kids, because they're all kids still except for Professor X. They're still parents, and Professor X, he's trying to explain desperately his hope for humanity and mutant kind to coexist. But the evolutionaries are basically like, no, that's not going to happen, brother. So now we are in the present, and in the present they are, all the Neos were just all wiped out by the evolutionaries. And Cyclops is, he's remembering all this stuff from when they were originally confronted them all of a sudden. He is really pressing hard for nobody to attack because he's seen what happens, because in these flashbacks there is a fight between the X-Men and the evolutionaries, and the X-Men are just stomped. And so the evolutionaries, they go through what's happened since that point when Cyclops was young, Cyclops and Iceman, everybody was younger. And they go through all the different things that humanity has done to mutant kind, such as the Sentinels, the Legacy virus, the destruction of Genosha, millions of mutants dying, and of course, the Scarlet Witch bending reality so that there were no more mutants. So these are all things that presumably could have been prevented if the mutants had just stepped up and obliterated, Homo sapiens. But again, obviously, Cyclops is the biggest extension that remains of Professor X's dream of, other than Professor X, that mankind and mutants can still live together. There may be an uneasy alliance between the two, but they can cohabitate on the same planet. Well, the evolutionaries don't. They still, they're not taken too kindly to that. So they think that, well, new leadership is in order, and so they try to eliminate Cyclops. Now, Cyclops is saved by, of course, some, obviously saved by his allies, but he's really pressing the telepaths not to do anything, not to attack, not to do anything. Nobody attacks, nobody does anything, but they do anyway. And they are all desperately trying to get Cyclops out of there, and Cyclops is saying, there's something to do with Jean Grey, something that she did. And of course there's, obviously Emma and Scott, having their thing again about Jean. There's something that she has to do with this. There's a memory that maybe she had, or that had suppressed in Cyclops somehow, something, whatever. We don't really understand. But Cyclops is trying to warn them that there's somebody that they cannot reach, that the evolutionaries cannot talk to, that they cannot deal with. And it's not really explained who that is until the very end, in which there is another flashback to the past, and you see who they're probably referring to as who Scott is trying to keep them away from. Really cool issue. There's some really fascinating stuff going on here. I'm really liking the art of the present day. I'm not liking so much the art of the past. It's a little too sketchy, inky. It's not as polished, and maybe that's what they're going for. But just as a personal preference, it just seems a little bit not so. It seems just too sketchy. But I love whenever Cyclops really steps up to the plate and does and really is a leader, because that's what he is. He is their leader. And so often we get kind of screwed out of that, because you have, Wolverine, seems to, the predominant thought in X-Men society, whatever, or the selling point of X-Men seems to always be Wolverine. So that's just, to me, that's really cool, and I'm glad that they're doing it this way. So getting back into the X-Men, that's really the only X-Men titles that I'm into right now are Prelude to Schism, also Cyclops centric and therefore cool, and this Chris Yost X-Men, the Uncanny, X-Force, other X-Men stuff. I could really care less, because it also doesn't seem to have anything to do with what's going on here. It seems to be important. Amazing Spider-Man 663, Dan Slott returns for an issue that brings us back Anti-Venom, and also brings us back to the Wraith, and we see possibly who the Wraith is. Some of that is explained, where it seems to be Jean DeWolf, who died a long time ago, back in the 80s. She was killed by a villain known as the Sin Eater, and the Wraith for a while was actually Jean DeWolf's brother, Brian, I think, but he was killed, So she really seems to be, this really seems to be a ghostly apparition, and it's kind of, anti-venom, is trying to take down some street thugs, and because apparently he's the only person like in all of New York that knows that Mr. Negative, this new villain, at least new to me, is and this guy Martin Lee, who is a big philanthropist, are the same person. Um, so he's trying to take down some of his thugs. Um, and some of them barely escape with their lives. Some of them turn themselves into the police almost immediately because they're so scared shitless of the Wraith. They're not even as scared. They're not even. There's a really funny moment in which they just run right past Anti-Venom when he's giving his whole, you're the disease and I'm the cure type of thing. It's like, hey, wait a minute, where are you guys going? I'm trying to instill fear into you, and you guys are running away. You guys are completely ignoring me. I thought that was a cute moment. It's kind of trademark slot, Dan Slott humor that has really kind of involved me in this series. But what also is cool is that this is a big day for Peter because not only is he a member of the Avengers and and the FF, the Future Foundation, but he's also just been published in the American Science Journal, which is to him, it's like this is like one of the biggest days of his life, because he's published in a scientific journal that has and has nothing to do with him being Spider-Man. It has everything to do with him being Peter Parker and being a very, very intelligent person. And there's a cool moment again where Aunt May has, she has bought like I don't know how many copies of the magazine, and is actually giving them out to people at this homeless shelter that she's working at, the soup kitchen, I should say. That is also run by this Martin Lee guy, and she sees him for a moment, and she gets kind of a weird memory flash of him killing somebody, but doesn't quite register, and she kind of goes into shock and passes out. There's concern for her, of course. Peter's on the phone with her when this happens. I was actually on the phone with, her husband Jay, the elder, Jameson Sr., and they're trying to rush her to the hospital, but then, of course, Anti-Venom is attacking Mr. Negative as he's kind of driving away, and of course this leads to a big brouhaha between Spidey and Anti-Venom because he's trying to save this Martin Lee, not knowing that he's also really a bad guy. And one thing I did not know until this issue, because I'm not too clued in on Anti-Venom, is that he can take Spider-Man's powers away. So that's kind of messed up. So you got two different comics right now that are dealing with a symbiote, in which Spider-Man is fighting both of them. So again, we had a little bit of discussion about comic continuity, and this is obviously another example of, well, okay, obviously this either took place before this, or this is taking place before this, whatever. Another little backstory with Cloak and Dagger, characters I haven't seen for a while, not since Runaways, actually, in which they are maybe potentially involved in things to come with Infestation or Spider Island, whatever that's going to be called. And then a cool little backstory, another, a third tale, little mini story at the back about, it's just a really bad day for Spidey. He's trying to save all these people, but they're really not in need of being saved, but one of them probably is. It's called Thanks But No Thanks. It's a cool little story. It's kind of the Spider-Man luck, kind of coming crashing down on Spider-Man, but only for a little while. Again, really good issue. Amazing Spider-Man has been terrific since Dan Slott took over, and I'm really glad I'm reading it again. So there's that. It's Dan Slott, it's Spider-Man, it's good stuff. I'm looking forward to Spider Island. So stick around. We'll be right back with more reviews. Stick around.